Now let's proceed. The next thing that we will talk about is actually the we try and create some um, methods. In our lecture, we created a clear method, and then we also created a constructor to initialize the values that we have there. And then also, I think now what we can do is, instead of taking hard-coded values, we can design a user interface where the user can enter all this information, right? So we can quickly add text boxes and then labels to design all this, right? So we could have, let's say, text boxes. So we add 4 text boxes for each of the items that we want to get from the user, right? So we have one text box for the student ID, another text box for the student first name, then for the student's last name, and then the test average, right? So we could easily just these things here, just design the form nicely. Then we could, so we could say in the properties window. So let's go to the properties window. So we would have the um, student ID. Then we have the first name. Then we have last name. Then we have average score. All right. Okay. So, and then these text boxes, we would have the various names. So here we'll change the name properties of these text boxes to, let's say, txt ID, txt name, txt. Okay, so here we change it to f name. All right, and we have txt l name. All right, so we have txt average score. Okay, so once we do that, we can quickly go to the run and then change the ones we hard coded. We can easily change them to these text boxes that we just created, right? So we wouldn't have to hard code it. The user would just enter whatever data they need to enter. Then they would click on here to assign them to the various properties, right? All right. So once we do that, then we go to our run button click event. Then we just change these ones here to the various text boxes, right? Now, since they are strings, we actually don't even need to do anything much. So all we need to do is we type txt ID. What is the other one? I see txt score, txt. What is that? All right, let me quickly go back and check whatever we did. txt txt ID. Guys, something strange is happening here. Okay, so let me go and change it and see what the issue is with my txt ID. I can't see it anywhere. All right, so let's change it to txt student ID. And let's go back there and see whether we will see it. Something interesting is happening. txt student. Okay. You know what? Let's change that text box to a different one. Maybe something is wrong with it. Okay, so we have txt. Right, txt student ID. Okay. txt. Now it has showed up. I don't know what's wrong with it. All right, the text. Okay, so here we also have txt l name, the text, and we have txt f name, the text, and here we have txt so now we'll need to convert this particular one, the text. All right, so what we will do here is to convert it to convert to single. Right, then we put it in here so that we'll convert that first of all to single before we assign it to the test average. All right, so once we are done, the code has been quickly changed. Now this time around, when we run it, we should be able to provide values to our code for further use, right? So if we run it like this, we should have be 4, 5, that. Then we'll have first name, we'll have Kwame, last name, we have Atu, we have O2, and average score, we have 46, right? When we click on run, now it has finished executing. When we click on show, it should be able to tell us all the data that we just entered. So basically, that is how we can work with it. With the same way we can output these things instead of outputting it on the message box, we can output them in text boxes. We can basically begin to use them as just normal variables and do whatever we want to do with it. Right? Okay. So the next thing, as I said, would be to create, let's say we want to create a clear method, right? in our student class. So here we will quickly come to the student.vb file, and then we begin to code our method. So we type clear method, right? So we have public. I'm not explaining it because we explain it in class when we're having our lecture session. We created a method that we use to remove all the values that were assigned to the various properties of our class. So we would have public sub, right? Then we have clear, right? And then we end it there. So we use this to clear the various properties. So the first property we clear is the what? str is equal to, right, that's string dot to empty. Now getting tired. So we will also have str last name is equal to string dot empty, right? So basically we are removing all the text that were assigned to the various variables. So if we remove those, then when you call them, nothing will come, right? So we have str first name, what is first name? Is equal to string dot empty. Yes. Now we have str test average, I think. The variable. Yeah, I think single test average. All right. We have single test average is equal to 0.0, right? So basically, to clear all the things that were there. Remember, we said usually we clear objects or we clear properties by changing the strings to empty string and by changing the numerical values to zeros, right? That's how we clear. Right. So anywhere you call the clear method, it will remove all this. So what we can do is we add another variable, another button here that we call what clear. So we are going to use it to clear the values that are stored. So we'll clear it with that. So once we do that, then we can quickly go to our form, add a button that we'll use to clear whatever is there. So when we just come to our form, right? So we just double click on the clear button, and then we just type fresh student or freshman dot clear, right? That's all. So once we call this, it is going to remove all the values that were stored in here. So when you run it and you enter some data here, 4, 5, 9, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, right? So we have the first name, the Kia Odum, and average score is 78. So when you type in some data, then you go to run, right? When you go to run, then you assign the data. Then you go to show, and you can see whatever you have written there. Are we all there?
Yeah.
All right. Then you hit on clear. All right. When you hit on clear, it's supposed to bring you back. When you hit on clear and go back to show, it's supposed to bring you nothing, right? So all of them will be nothing except the place where you have 0 and F. When you clear, it is not like you are clearing
Yeah.
the form. You are actually clearing the variables that are holding the values that are in the form, right? So
The values.
even though the
Okay.
values are
Okay.
still in the form, they are not in the variable. So if you want them to go into the variable again, you have to click on run before you can show them again. Then you can clear them again and show, and you see now. Before we proceed, I want us to demonstrate something. So everybody go and run your application. Run your application. And then after you run it, try clicking on the show without clicking and without putting anything in the run. When you click on the show, what happens? When you run your application, you don't enter any values, but then you go ahead and click on the show button. When you click on the show button, because you haven't assigned anything to all these properties, they are all empty, right? There's no data there. They are just null values. So it will give you an error, right? They are nothing. So, and nothing usually is not a very good value. So usually in order to avoid this, that is why when you pick a button and you drop it on the form, they already fill it with some initial values, right? So the things that can be left empty, they leave them empty. But those that are required, they always fill them with default values. So that if you want, you can go ahead and change them. So because we didn't create default values for our properties, when the user just makes a mistake and click on some button, our program all will go haywire and go messed up, right? So the next thing we'll do is to create a constructor. And in this class, when we create the constructor, we will assign some initial values to it so that any object that is created from that class will already have some um, default values assigned to it so that later on we can always change those default values. So we will go back to our um, student.vb class, and then under the sub procedure, we will create a new class. I mean, a new method. So open that. We said we create constructors sub procedures, but the name of the sub procedure should be new. So once you create the sub procedure with the name new, it is a constructor. Now, anytime you instantiate a class or you create a new object from a class, then you are able to call this method automatically, right? So let's create a constructor. So we create a constructor. So we will have public sub, and then the name of our sub procedure should be what? New, right? And we don't have any parameters. So we create it like this. So what makes it a constructor is that the name is new, right? So this new keyword is what makes it a constructor. So we would have just all these things we have here. I will quickly just copy these things here so that I don't have to type all of that. So I will, so strid is equal to, so in my constructor, I call it unknown, right? So I used unknown for all the text, the string properties. So I just put unknown unknown. And then here I'll put 0.0. So what it means is that anytime I create an object from the student class, that object, the str property should be, the student ID should be unknown, the student last name should be unknown, the student's first name should be unknown, and then the test average should be 0. So that is basically what I mean. So this time, when we run our application and we don't put in any values and just click on the show, all things being equal, these are the values that should show. Let's go through the same process. So this time we don't put anything and we just hit on this. Now there's an issue. What issue is that? Freshman is still nothing. Okay, let's see what is this. It's still, all of them are still not. Oh. Okay. Let me see what this is about. Because I think the problem is that we didn't instantiate the class inside the method that we are trying to use. So we will use freshman equal to new student, right? Good. So now if we do this, it should get it to work. All right. So what we did, now what we did not do is that we only created an object in the form 1, in the button 1 click. Now what that means is that if we don't click on this button, an object doesn't get created. And once the object doesn't get created, then the constructor will not run. So in order for us to be sure that the constructor runs every time we click on this button, so we just have to put it like this. All right. So that is where we are now. Now, the next thing we need to do, at least this is all what we would do concerning this class. So we've created a class, we created member variables, we created properties, right? Read and write properties. We created a read-only property. We created a method. Then we created a constructor. So let's quickly do something else. We spoke about inheritance in our previous class, where we said that you can create a class and create another class to inherit from the base class, right? So let's quickly create another class. And this one, I don't know what name we can give to that class. So we go through the same process. So we have project, and then we add class. All right. Then we go to the same process. So we have class. Now, okay, yes, but we can have prefix. So class, so prefix. All right. Do we all understand? So we are creating a subclass from a student. So a prefect must always be a student. So a prefect will have all the properties of a student. Maybe then we can add more properties to it and stuff like that. Okay, so we just do the add, right? And that should add a student to our, a prefect to our list of files. So if we can go to the Solutions Explorer, and then we would see the prefect.vb added to our list of classes, right? So all we need to do is just write one statement, and then this prefect class will inherit all the things that a student the student class has. So for instance, we can just write what we call the inherit statement, right? So that inherit statement must always be the first statement in our class code, like the first statement after the class declaration. So we will have inherit, right? Now here, we would use the name of our project as the namespace, right? The name of our project is what? Working with classes. I don't know whether you decided to save it as mine or you decided to save it with whatever name you chose. But whatever name you choose, you have to make sure you use that name. So working with classes is the namespace. So we have working with classes dot student. All right. So this inherits is a keyword. This here is the name of the project that contains the class that we want to inherit from. And then this student here is the name of the class that we want to inherit from. So just by writing this statement, this prefect class would begin to have all the properties of the student class, right? And the methods. So in that case, if I go to my form 1, and then I decide to declare a variable with type prefect. So for instance, if I say dime senior prefect, right? What compound prefect? Let's was anybody compound prefect as as new prefect, right? So if we create an object like this, an object named compound prefect, right? Now that object automatically would have all these things that we created here. For instance, if I just type here, right, compound prefect, right, compound, what is that, compound prefect, and I type dot, right, you should see all the properties that we created. All the properties that we created and the method that we created, they are all here. The clear method, the last name, the student ID, the average score, the test grade, all of them are now properties of what? The prefect class. So we can go ahead and create more properties for the prefect class. Now those properties will now be only unique to the prefect class. But then the prefect class will inherit all the properties of the student class just by writing this statement. So, okay. So we can go ahead and add more properties. So we can have public property, right? Then the property name, cubicle, right? So we can have cubicle, okay. So cubicle number as integer. All right, so we can write get this cubicle number here will only be unique to the student class, I mean the prefect class, right? The student class will not be able to have the cubicle. So the prefect class will now have all the properties and methods of the student class, plus the ones that are unique only to the prefect class. So we can add this So we will have maybe private, so we have prefect, let's say queue number. So prefect queue number as integer. So here you return prefect queue number, and then here you say prefect queue number is equal to what value, right? So that's a full property. So when we come here, so we type dot, right? We should see the prefect queue number somewhere. That's the queue number. I hope we can all see. So you can see the queue number that affects the prefect. So you can also create the methods that are peculiar to only prefects, and you can do multiple things for this. All right, so that is the classes that we create. We can also even create forms that we inherit from other forms. For instance, this form we just created. If we want to create a similar form and just add certain things to it, we can just create a form that will inherit from this. So in order to create a class to inherit from a student class, it is just straightforward. So we go to the same project. All right, so we go to add, let's say add form, right? Add Windows form. So when you come here, you will see all this. Now, under installed, let's go to Windows Forms. You click on Windows Forms. So we have inherited form. We will quickly go here, and then we will change the name to maybe form inherit, right? So I just choose any name at all. Now once we choose it, we give it any name. What we need to do is just click on what? Add, right? So once you click on add, a new form will come up. Now you see this kind of form, and that form would have a list of all the forms in your project. Then you decide which form you want to inherit from, right? So we call it the inheritance picker. All right, so you just make sure form one is selected, and you click on OK. Click on OK, and then you go next. Now, once you do that, you will see your new form will show up with all the controls that are already there, right? So we can add more controls. So this is your new form. That's the form FRM inherited.bb form, right? I hope we can all see ours to come looking exactly like the form one. So we can add more controls to it, but it's just that whatever controls are already there, we don't have control over them, right? They will just be where they are. They will just do whatever they do. Even we can decide to run it, and it will just run. Oh, now we have to go and change it, and then we go to the properties and we change the starter form. Then we can run it and see it will just behave exactly as the other one, right? So we will bring our lesson to an end here. Have a nice day.